All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Dunn County Executive Committee to order. Call the roll. Everyone is here except Supervisor Vogel, who is excused. Approval of minutes. I would need a motion in a second. Supervisor Morehouse moves. Supervisor Sedin seconds. Any speaking to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I got a typo.
Hooray! No, genuinely, someone is reading close enough for typos. This makes me very happy.
Item 9, from Planning, Resource, and Development, it says rezone is missing an E at the end of it.
It's a rezon?
It's a rezon. Yeah. Thank you.
Like a raison d'être? Okay, so. Okay, with that taken care of, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. On to public comments. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Okay, with that, I will close public comments. County Manager's Report. Chris, over to you.
Okay, pretty quick. You have a copy of the draft county board agenda in your packet. So we'll do sort of our last round of budget updates. Dan's going to do a run through again of just kind of trying a little bit different approach of pointing out what borrowing means and doesn't mean, not necessarily with trying to convince people to borrow, just trying to make sure that people have the right information. I've had some different conversations with individuals, which lead me to believe that people still don't understand that borrowing money doesn't necessarily mean increasing taxes. So I want to just make sure that we're going to try our darndest to make sure that that's clear. You have an ordinance, a second reading. So routine budget adjustment, second reading on a land information council changes. An ordinance designating the official newspaper of the county for a first reading, moving that to become the Colfax Messenger, correct?
Yep.
Yes, okay. You just approved the legislative agenda. I'll get a crack at that, as well as the Medicaid expansion resolution and the state funding for programming, mental health programming. And then a resolution approving the Red Cedar Racing lease. The only probably, and I don't know that it'll even be a matter of discussion, but probably the one point of that there may be some discussion would just be the length of the lease. It is a proposed 10-year agreement with an escalating payment over that period of time. But there is agreement on part of the Racing Association and the Facilities Committee on that project. And then adopting the 2025 pay grid, as well as the health benefit premiums, and a rezone. And then I did not add it, but I will include during the county manager piece. We'll just have Andrew Marcel do a brief update on just election and preparations and sort of what's been happening in the election world.
Excuse me. I know Diane has asked you to include the Dr. Hall's
Yep.
report. Would that be reports of committees, or where do you want to put that?
I don't think that she's, correct me if I'm wrong, Supervisor Morehouse, but I don't think we're necessarily looking at it to be reported out on, just for it to be a reference document for.
Just purely, okay.
Yep. Which I could just explain briefly that it's in their packet and it's just a reference document.
Perfect. I wanted it to have a home.
Okay. Oh, and I neglected to say, you'll hear from IT, Corporation Council, and Facilities for the board reports or department reports. That's it. Oh, and so unrelated, just as long as I have a agenda item for report of the county manager, just wanted to do a real brief update on our ERP project. We had a request for proposal, which went out some weeks back. We had 9 respondents to that proposal. The committees,
Oh.
what are called the PITs, who are they, Dan? The performance improvement teams. Each of their leads are all in the process of reviewing those RFPs and selecting 2 to 4 vendors for demonstrations later this month. And we held a little event at lunchtime today to celebrate us getting this far, invited all of the people that have been touching the project thus far for lunch, and kind of did a kumbaya urara for all the work that's been accomplished to get us to this point. And now we're going to move forward. So the next steps of the process will be to select the 2 to 4 vendors for demonstrations, do demonstrations, select a vendor, do contract negotiations, do the purchase, and then it moves into design, planning, testing, design and testing. Is that what we're doing? See, I'm saying, like, I have to look to Dan for what all these languages are, but yes, we'll figure out how we're going to, what it'll look like for us, and we'll test that. And then our goal is to go live sometime next summer.
Excellent. Anyone have any questions for Chris? All right. Reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board from the executive committee. Item A, review and recommendation of draft FY 2025 Dunn County budget. I would need a motion in a second. Supervisor Morehouse moved, Supervisor Steen seconds. This is substantively the budget we looked at last time. Is there anything you would like to draw our attention to?
I believe Beata and Dan have prepared a brief little presentation for you.
Awesome.
I was cavorting around Europe while they were working on this project.
You were taking a very well-earned vacation.
Good evening. Okay, so you've got a lot of versions of this budget, right? Since we started in June. So what was included in your packet since then, some minor changes came about that I thought, well, at least we can look at the latest and the greatest. So I gave you hard copies of what had changed. It's nothing significant, but some of the departments were adamant that this gets reflected on that. So it's known that this actually decreased the gap that we originally presented to you in the packet. So I also provided you a presentation. Oh, there you go. Thank you very much. It's already up on the screen. So I just kind of want to go through for the proposed 2025 budget. So again, some of the main objectives here is to have an overview of the executive committee direction that was given to us last time we met. And after that, and then as even between now and the last time we've met, there were some changes and some actions that were taken by management, either voluntarily, and some of them were per the directions that we were given last time we've met. And then there's the proposed 2025 budget. We're going to touch base a little bit about where we are with levy limit and again the debt. We're going to present to you what is our general fund balance looking like, and then your actions for this evening. So, and again, last time we met was September 11th. So the direction we were given at that time is to apply fund balance. And then there was a discussion about eliminating the position request that we only had one from the sheriff. So we also removed that. And also is to maintain that 2% and the step wage in the proposed budget. And also we were asked to, direction was to decrease the operating budget, including the workers' compensation. So last time you've seen the gap was about that $7 million gap. So with some of those changes that were made per the recommendation and some management went through their budget in meantime, that got reduced to 5.5 million. And here's what really contributed towards that reduction. So there were, of course, some updates because we start our budget really early in the year. So a lot of those grants are not known yet. So by the time we get down to next month, we'll have more of accurate numbers. So that also has been reflected here. We also analyzed the vacant positions. And we do this every year. We did that the last 2 years I've been here. So that when we budget for a vacant position, we analyze the benefits, meaning that we take actual population that actually is eligible for benefits to determine out of that population how many gets family, single, or none at all. So using at those trends, we then apply that to the vacant positions. So we don't budget a family for every vacant position because that might not be the case. And then, of course, we eliminated the new position request by the sheriff, and that also includes the squad car. And the reason it's 120 because that position will also budgeted revenue. So that's the squad car, the position, less the revenue. We also decreased the worker compensation by 186. And how that was done is, again, looking at our rates, percentage rates, and we decreased that based on claims. And I don't want to go too in depth into the methodology. But then most importantly, it decreased operations by approximately 1.1 million. So a huge contributor to this was, again, the big departments, which is sheriff, DHS, and highway. So next I have the proposed balanced budget. Okay, thank you. So we are right now at 111,216,023. Okay, so based on the direction we were given, we balanced this budget by applying the debt. I'm not sorry, not the debt. Yes, we did apply the debt, which is part of that 14 million. So that's the $11 million for the solar and the geothermal and the highway. Then I've kind of highlighted to what is that fund balance, that gap, and that is of that 2.5. Before you saw the gap being 5, that includes that $3 million debt. Make sense? So in the previous slides, I've mentioned the gap was at that. Yes. So that is the fund balance and the debt, those added together. Okay. Levy limits. So how we stand with the 2025. So we have a preliminary levy limit. It's at right now at that $24.7 million. So also we have the bridges and petition and the libraries. So that's that 925. I also wanted to point out if that was an increase or decrease compared to last. So for them, there was an increase of approximately 96,000. Then we have the debt. See, our debt here increased from last time because this already includes the interest that we're going to pay for the money we borrowed and actually closed today. And that leaves with the limited levy of at 18.6. And that increased by slightly that $35,000 from last year. So we stand in a debt Now, this is right off of our audit, and this is our outstanding debt as of 2020, at the end of 23. So that's that 28 million. So this doesn't really include the 3 we just borrowed.
I just want to point out that my slides are inaccurate. The one you have that says that our limited levy increased by 34,900 is the correct number. Correct. Yeah.
And guess what? Tomorrow, because I sat down with one of the major departments, we had another slight change. So you'll see slight change, which is in favor, which is decreased that fund balance tomorrow. It'll be in tomorrow's packet. We because we just love to have all these different versions, but okay. So where we are with that, so then our debt obligation, this is that debt margin out of what we can legally borrow, we are at 11.07%. Okay, so this is just as a reference as to where we are at with that in comparison to what we could potentially legally borrow. And of course, we continue to have AA at a stable rating from Standard & Poor's, a rating agency. The next one I wanted to, there's a lot on this slide, but this references to our fund balance. Now, as you recall, last time when our auditors came and also Chris Corpola mentioned it too, that the unassigned fund balance as of the 2023 audit shows like that 16 million. But we moved some of that to the highway. So that is already reflected in that 13.7. Okay, so that's our starting point. In 2024, we, when we did the budget, same time last year, we applied $1.4 million of fund balance. So that then leaves us with that 12.3 to be, that becomes available, that can be applied at a future budgets. So where do we stand with the percentage in comparison to our resolution that got passed? So the resolution here, we said we're going to be no less than 35% and no greater than 50. So I just wanted to point out where are we actually sitting at, even if the decision is to apply that 2.5 fund balance, and where would that percentage be at? So the percentage of the unassigned fund balance in the general fund, right now we are at 53. Now with the applied in 2024, will get us to 47%. So now if we go ahead and apply what's in green here, $2.5 million to balance our 25 budget, that would get us down to 37%. Okay. And the last slide here, kind of revisiting again, is what is some of the options for your actions. So of course, the gap we have is at 5.5. So there's a couple options. I only named 2. I mean, the options are endless. You can have a lot of scenarios, but one option is to accept it how it is proposed by the management, or by also applying the fund balance of that 2.5. But keep in mind that Chris and I looked at this and say, for the last 4 years, we've been applying fund balance to balance our budget. And we wanted to know is out of that money that we committed in the budget, how much of that was used? None. So we used it as a balancing tool, but we as a potential to draw money on if needed, but it was never used. So we looked at 4 years back, and we actually put back in the fund balance. And what was really put back is really money that was received as cash, either the taxes, the levy that was allocated, services we billed for and got paid for, some grants, savings in how we spend the money. So we were able to put back
So stated a different way, because we just looked at these numbers yesterday. In 2023, we allocated about $2.7 million. Maybe two, I'm just going to go 2.5. We've allocated about $2.5 million of fund balance to balance the budget. We didn't spend that. And in fact, we put an additional $2.5 million back into the fund. So essentially, we were under budget by about $5 million at year's end. So as Beata shows you, 2024, we've allocated or we've committed $1.4 million of fund balance. We might not spend that. We might spend all of it, or we might spend some part of it or none of it, or we might spend less than that and put additional money back in. So Beata's just saying in the last 4 years, while every year we've used fund balance to balance our budget, we've committed it, we've never expended any of it. Our balance has continued to grow each year.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Chris, may I, Mr. Chairman? Is the gap mostly grants? I mean, the difference?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, I think that there's, so some of that is what we currently budget as our wage variance. So we budget it that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's how it's going to be turn out. But we know that, for instance, we know that we run at about, we took a pretty deep dive into it, Dan and I, one day, and, we know we run right at about solidly on the county employee side, not related to the neighbors, because the neighbors ends up being a little bit different, but on just the non-neighbors county side, we are solidly 4% under every year. And so you think about 4% of $50 million, that's a lot of money. It's $2 million. So some of it's that underspending on the wage side of it. Some of it is increased grant. Some of it is when you collect fees greater than you anticipated that it would collect. Lots of different variables. Underspending, things just cost, sometimes weirdly, some things cost less than you think that they're going to. So.
And
Add to that when these budgets are created by departments, we have to submit them in July or in June of this year for a purchase that we could make in November of 2025. You have no idea how much that's going to cost. So that budget is set pretty comfortably so that we know. So I think for the most part, you're seeing us budget a safe number, and that's why you're seeing us come in under.
Yeah, I will just add very briefly to that. For example, we had a number of years where we had about $1 million hole appear for different reasons. There was SAP, there was a highway issue, there was HHS. This is a budget presented ideally to give us some cushion in case one of those things starts on fire again. Supervisor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got a question. If we're putting money back in the fund, why are we borrowing money? I mean, that's going to be the question that's going to come up in a meeting. I might as well answer it now, because why not just take the money and not borrow?
It is. And so that's where, Dan, can you pop back? Lost you.
to
PowerPoint.
the
You
budget
can't
line.
No, it's going to back to the fund balance side. The fund balance. So
So that would be your page, because you have a hard copy of that.
yeah, you're right. You do. have a
So
hard copy
page
of-
7.
Okay, so at the end of 2023, you have $13.7 million in your fund balance. I believe at the end of 2022, you had like 12.9. I'm just making up a number close because I don't remember exactly, but
Yeah, it was a little over 2 million that was put.
yep. And so it went, so you budgeted, if we had expended everything we thought we were going to, or that we had budgeted in 2023, it would have gone down by about $2.5 million. It didn't go down by $2.5 million. In fact, it went up by money that went back into it. So when Beata's proposing, not be out of herself pursuing, but she's illustrating what the proposal to spend $2.5 million of that 13, well, 13 minus what we've committed for this year, $12 million. It's so spend 2.5 of that $12.3 million balance. That's exactly what we're advocating for. But that doesn't fully close the gap. Now, you can make a decision to spend all of the gap out of fund balance. That is a decision that can be made.
Although it would
The ordinance
violate our
wouldn't let you.
policy.
Well, it'll let you, it says, it says we'll maintain a balance of 35%. If we fall below that, we have to come up with a plan to put it back. So you could spend below it, but then we have to figure out how we're going to replenish it.
Well, and part of the discussion of this has to do with that series of years, which the last couple have been very good in that way, but we did have that series of years where we had budgeted X amount and then we had to pull $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.3 million out of fund balance because things started on fire. So the borrowing gets us to the borrowing without raising taxes because it is in fact we are borrowing less than we are paying off. So it's not an increase in taxes, but it gives us that safety cushion in case this year we do use the 2.5 or if we budgeted the full 5.5 and then something else started on fire. It's the prudent choice, I think.
Nice word.
You're welcome. That's my take on it. If
No, I was just gonna say, does that answer your question? The question is it would take us out of compliance with our own policy. And then we, by policy, would have to bring it back up to the 35%. Put together a plan to bring it back up to that 35%.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you. I'm almost asking a question to give me time to think more about this. But so in summary, in thinking about the borrowing, we could not borrow. We could take everything from the fund balance and make a plan to pay it back. And that might work. But in a situation like we've had in the past, it might cause a real problem and delete the fund balance even more. So if we didn't borrow and we took it down, maybe it took it down to 28%. And then we had a problem and all of a sudden it's down to 15%. So is that the kind of idea that we're being careful?
Yes, yes.
Well, what does prudent mean? No, thank you.
Well, and I mean,
I
part
kind of
of
had to
it
hear
is-
it 3 or 4 times and I'll have to hear
Yeah,
it
no, I
again.
think that's exactly correct. That you're leaving yourself that 30 at that roughly 35% level, you're leaving yourself some risk abatement. If something comes up unexpectedly, that would drop you below that.
And it could also play effect if we do need to borrow. Then if the fund balance is depleted, then our rating could change.
Well, and it's worth noting that the board that is making the decisions about this budget is the same board that will be making next year's decisions as well. And if it turns out that, we don't spend any of that 2.53, we will be in a much better position next year, having had a regular, careful, prudent approach. And maybe next year, if we have, instead of 13, we have 16, then maybe we don't need to do the borrowing next year. It's one of those things where we're not just trying to solve the problem for this budget. We're trying to solve the problem in a way that leaves us in a responsible position for the next budget and the budget after that.
I think without as a little precursor to sort of Dan's coming back to it for county board, but I think it's worth talking a little bit about, there's another impact to not borrowing money.
I have the slides.
All right.
If everybody's ready for
Uh,
black and white slides.
Any questions for me? before I walk away and then have, Dan, you said you have the slides now?
The draft format of the slide.
All right,
from the
draft.
board meeting.
That's the key word right there, draft.
Um,
And also, just a quick note, prior to this meeting, I send you an email with a link to all the supporting documentation. And keep in mind, it's a fluid document, so it might change after this meeting. So I will keep overriding them so you have the latest and the greatest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very little.
um,
You know, they need to give us new glasses.
Right. So. So at the board meeting, you would have gotten a copy of this so you could read the numbers. Let's see if I can zoom in on. Oh, no, I'm not in edit mode. So this slide is kind of showing you the pieces of the levy itself. And so it's breaking up what we refer to as a limited levy and the bridge petitions and the libraries and then the debt levy. So this item here that's highlighted, and so this is kind of showing what happens if we don't borrow. So
Can you
This-
just roughly read them, the numbers, just because it's so
yeah,
hard
let
to.
me see if I can.
I don't know, we could all stand up at the front of the room like
Could all
eager young
stand
students.
Um, oh, really big. Yeah. All right. So what you know what? I can do this a different way.
Uh,
Yep.
Needler.
There we go. It is, but I can zoom this one better. All right. So this is going to show, it's kind of focus on this top section up here. Yeah. Get rid of all of the completely unprepared to present this, so I apologize.
Well, to be fair, we were completely unprepared to listen to it, so we're all even.
Uh, All right. There we go. So this is kind of looking at this top section right here is looking at borrowing if we did not borrow in 2024 and beyond. So what you see here, this limited levy is the portion that goes up on an annual basis based on net new construction. That is the only thing that impacts that. So if somebody builds a house, that number goes up. Somebody
Tears down.
tears down a house, that number goes up or down. That
Depends on the
is
house.
pretty much how that one happens. So then the debt levy is really that debt service payment. So what we pay on an annual basis for the bonds that we have out there. So we are looking at a significant decrease in 2027, and then we get a little bit of a stability back in 28 and 29. So if you don't borrow, this line right here is kind of that total levy. So this is this is the number that gets divvied out to the taxpayers. And then this column right here is just showing you how much that changes in the overall levy. Next one is the total equalized value. I don't actually know what the equalized value will be in the future. So this is just based on a 5% increase of equalized value. So, and then this is then showing what that change in the levy, what that amounts to for $100,000 house. So if you have $100,000 house, the, what did I do? So, if you have a $100,000 house and you can see that the debt levy is actually going up about $6,000. That's just how that payment schedule is set. You'll see that the limited levy, I have this, also don't know what net new construction is going to be in the future. So this is based on 1.2%, which is kind of about where we live. So that's going to result in a $200,000 increase. So your $100,000 house will cost you an additional $4 in taxes theoretically in that year. The next year you would see a decrease of about $10.50 on your county tax. The next year you would see another $9 decrease. And so this is, you got to realize like this is less than the year before. And then you're going to see an increase again in that next year, because we kind of got that debt levy stabilized, but the limited levy is now coming up. So yeah, that was on the slide. so yeah. Yep. But that's kind of what that looks like, is you do see a little bit of that decrease. And I think what I would say is, people are going to see a decrease and they may be happy about that $10 decrease, and I bring you back to my last presentation in the board, where just because that goes down by $10 does not mean that their tax bill will go down. Their tax bill could very easily still go up, and go up considerably, depending on if their school district had a change, or so many things can impact that. So it's just the county's portion of that would be impacted. And then you see the other changes that are happening there. And then, so I guess I run through this in the mind of a taxpayer, happen to be one, that, I saved $10. Oh, I saved $9. What? It went up $3? So that's kind of, as you look at that, and kind of getting a little bit of stability there. So this next one was just a scenario that I ran if, let's say we don't borrow, but then we decide in 2028 that we want to build a new highway facility. So now what we see is my taxes went down $10, my taxes went down $9, my taxes went back up 26. So once again, I kind of sit there, where's that impact from a day-to-day level, as you have a lot of loss of stability in that, in your tax bill on that individual level. And then this last one is actually the scenario that was presented at the last board meeting, where we actually kind of, so with that if we were to borrow in 2025 and kind of maintain this $5.3 million debt levy, we can kind of stabilize what those tax increases are like to individuals over time. Then we also have flexibility to do things. So let's say that you're doing $3 million every year to pay for highway projects. Realistically, if we were to borrow $3 million over time, that debt levy number is going to go down until we hit a certain point. That actually gives us room, if you did want to do a highway project in, say, 28 or 27, you could fit that in and still maintain that 5.3. So you're stabilizing how much a taxpayer is paying from year to year, while still kind of having flexibility to borrow for the smaller highway projects, but also larger capital charges over time.
Well, and that I think reinforces the point of being careful with how much we draw out of fund balance, because if fund balance is slowly accumulating, we have a little bit more room in there when we get to the highway shop, which we are inevitably going to get to. That gives us a little more room to be generous with the fund balance on what's going to be a very expensive project that is on the radar.
Tonight you can skip the board meeting. You got the presentation.
So I think that the point, the true take home point is part of the goal of borrowing is to be able to fund things like highway projects and capital projects. Another part of the borrowing is to stabilize the tax levy to the residents of Dunn County. So it just makes it more predictable than the ups and the downs that come from sort of not borrowing, then borrowing a big chunk, then not borrowing, then borrowing some, then et cetera.
Yeah, I might phrase that the borrowing exists to fund things like highway and the highway shop. The recommendation for how we're doing the borrowing exists to stabilize the taxes as close to no net increase as possible.
I would also kind of point out, and I didn't state it, and, but some of that increase to that, as I talked to, like $4 increase, it isn't necessarily that an individual is going to see that $4 increase, because it is based on net new construction. There's a new house and there's a new taxpayer that's going to be absorbing a portion of that increase. So
Plus the equalized value is.
yeah.
Okay, any more questions for?
So keeping in mind that the day so our board meeting is on the 12th? No, 15th, I don't know, 16th. And Beata and I looked at this. Oh, no, so our publication, I'm sorry, I'm confusing dates that we were looking at. So immediately after our board meeting, in order to meet our publication requirements for our budget, we have to publish our proposed budget yet in that week. So whatever direction you provide at this point in time will result in the final document of that proposal. It doesn't mean you can't change it. It can't be changed between now and then. It's just that those are the numbers that will go to publication in our official newspaper, et cetera.
Supervisor Quinn.
Just to clarify in my head, at the last board meeting, I think the theme of the presentation was that we were going to base our debt on maintaining the current level of debt payment going forward. This doesn't do that. This raises it, right? Doesn't?
This actually reduces it a little bit. Oh, but the 11 million.
No, I understand the 11 million, yeah, but it looks like it was debt service in 2024 is 5,078,000, and here it's 5,170,000. Am I missing something?
So the peak year that was presented is 2026. So there is an increase between, you were correct that 2024 is like 5,070,000, 25 is 5,170,000, 26 is projected to be with borrowing at about 5.3 million, and that's where.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me from the presentation. So I'm just want to be sure that we're ready to explain that change in strategy when we get to the meeting, because some people may notice it, and it sounds like a bait and switch if you don't know what's really going on.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further questions or speaking? All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. To be very clear about what that motion and second are. That would be the proposed budget as recommended with the 3 million in borrowing and the 2.53. Okay, I just want to make sure that we're very clear on what the motion is. All right. Knowing the motion. Yes.
Yeah.
Because this has all been discussion, with motion on the floor.
She lost me in the dust.
So with that, I believe we are ready to vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That'll be our recommendation. Okay, that was the difficult one. Let's see how fast we can get through the mostly much simpler ones. 8B, 2024 budget adjustment, CJC, DHS, SHF, PhD?
Public health.
Oh, great, thank you, because that's a very different thing in my world.
It's public health.
I mostly spend time with academics. All right, I need a motion in a second. Supervisor Headland moves, Supervisor Steen seconds. You've all seen a million of these at this point. You know how they work. Does anyone have any specific questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 8C, designate the official newspaper for the county. This has been something that Mike Kinnear has been gently bringing to my attention repeatedly over the last, I don't know, year and a half. And I have promised him that I would get it eventually onto one of our agendas. So Mike, do you want to lay out your thinking? Because that's pretty much the thinking behind this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for putting on the agenda. I have been asking to change, for one reason, we've been using the Dunn County News, which has a circulation, I think, of maybe 300 now, and it doesn't have any local news in it at all. It's triple the expense of the Colfax paper. So it's only going downhill. They have no local office of any kind. So I suggested that we do the Colfax newspaper, the Colfax Messenger, which has a Dunn County circulation, just in the last paper, it was noted, of at least 1,000, not counting ones that are in like grocery stores that people pick up and so forth. And it has local ownership. So if you don't like something in there, you can talk to the person. Now, I want to point out that there's a difference between the editorial page and the news. The news is done very well and is factual. And with that in mind, I think it's a good idea to change. More people will get the information that we've been trying so hard to get out to them. And with this change, I think it helped.
Okay, so that was a little bit informal because we don't yet have a motion on the floor, but I thought that this was, well, no, I thought that this is one of those where people would like to know what's going on. So now I need a motion in a second.
Oh, good.
I'm going to give the movement to Supervisor Kinnear because he's been relentless, but I will give you the second, Supervisor Steen.
Thank you. Where am I from?
See, there's the real push behind this, it's behind me. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further speaking?
Yes.
Supervisor Steen?
I just want to point out that not only does the Messenger cover the county very well, the reporter is a very good reporter. And she does her research, and she's treated the county pretty well. I've asked her numerous times to do articles on the health department or human services department or the veterans department. She does her homework, she digs in and she reports. And she follows townships and the village of Colfax, and she's also the chairman of the town of Otter Creek, I think so. A well-versed person. Leanne Ralph is her name, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Sounding aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item 9, review of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committees. Legislative committee resolution approving 2024 legislative agenda. Just looking at any of these that we actually need to vote on. Doesn't look like it. Item B, resolution supporting the expansion of Medicaid. Actually, let's legislative committee, you were all here for that, so I don't think we need to speak to that at all. That was just minutes ago. Resolution supporting the expansion of Medicaid. Does anyone have any? Well, that's also part of the legislative agenda. We've done this. Increased state funding for medical assistance community support programs. Great. D, facilities committee. There we go. My allergies are apparently making my brain function somewhat subnormally. Resolution approving a lease for the Red Cedar Racing. Normally, I would ask Ann to answer any questions, but since Ann is not here, if you have something, Randy is going to be the go-to person for questions. Nope. These are all just, they're going through.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
Oh,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I think I can summarize. So much of the contents of the lease is basically the same as it was. The difference would be, again, going to the 10-year duration, a change of the fee structure, just updated to the current numbers. There is an increase of the responsibility of the Racing Association to carry a higher liability insurance.
No.
It didn't to 2 million?
It was.
It was one.
two. It was.
Oh, it was 2.
It was
Oh.
requested to be 1
Oh, okay.
and then countered with 5.
Oh,
and
yes.
Settled on 2.
There we go. All right. So I stand corrected. I was thinking it was just 1. And there is some language around the exploration and funding of building additional sound mitigation particularly on the west corner of the track, which sound carries into town. So could be trees, could be fencing, anything, and there's a plan for them to develop a plan, and the facilities committee to be involved in approving that. Otherwise, I think there's not really a whole lot else in there that's of substantive change.
Supervisor Morehouse, then Supervisor Steen.
I'm just curious about the 10-year duration. I understand that that's probably in the interests of the Red Cedar Racing Association. I wonder if it's in ours.
I would suggest that that's an open question. And it would certainly be something when it comes before the board someone could certainly propose an amendment to that timeline.
I think the thought was just that it doesn't substantively change over time. And the financial part of it is upgraded by the year. But it's not sacred by any means that it can't be a different timeline. It takes, some amount of muddling around and back and forth and staff and association time to do it. I don't even know that it was necessarily their recommendation fully. We had a conversation about it, so it wasn't something that they were pushing.
Thank you.
Supervisor Steen, then Supervisor Quinn.
Going along with what Supervisor Morehouse said, is there an escape clause here?
I think so. Generally, there are. It's been a while since I looked at it. Usually, there's an ability to get out with the written notice to the or with notification to the parties. But Dan will check for us.
Sure,
He's got it up.
We'll find that for you.
Okay, and then an additional part of my question is then, is there the terms or monetary terms, are they revisited every year or every how many years, or how do they do that?
It's laid out in the schedule in the actual lease document. It lays out an increase each year, or it lays out the schedule of increases.
Thank you.
Supervisor Quinn.
Well, I was going to ask a similar question to Gary's about the, whether there's an escape clause. And I just think, it's not likely But at some point in time, 7 years from now, let's say, we had an opportunity to say, it makes sense to relocate the fairgrounds and use this property for some better community value. Would we be forced to continue operating a racetrack there?
No, there's a right to terminate if the
Oh, good. That's the answer I
rec
wanted to hear.
park property is no longer used for that purpose.
Is there any other?
Breaches of the lease agreement, give rise to termination. Right,
Supervisor Kinnear.
Nick, could you, it's not in the contract, is it, that says if it changes, if the use of the park changes?
let me find the exact wording if I can. So failure to perform or observe any obligations in the lease is ground, creates a right to terminate. Non-compliance. In the event the county sells the recreation park property, the agreement terminates, but the racing association would have the right to finish the racing season of that year. That's in Article 2, term of agreement modification renewal.
Page?
1, 2. Well, hang on. It's on page 31 of the board of the meeting packet, or page 1 of the contract.
Supervisor Steen, did you have another?
Oh, yeah, let's say we fall out of love with the racing association after 7 years and we want to end it. Can we end it?
No, there isn't a clear provision for terminating. I'm looking, I'll confess, I had very little involvement with this contract.
And I want to stress that I want to get along with the racing,
Yeah.
but I think we have to protect our long-term
What's
interests.
the word? I'm looking for a word.
Okay, so I'm going to note that this is the report going to the county board. We're not going to be rewriting or adjusting it here. If people, for example, wanted to recommend that it goes back to the facilities committee with some concerns, that would be certainly a motion that would be appropriate at the meeting. If someone wanted to, move some of the terms that they would like to see, that would also be a motion that would be appropriate at the meeting. But here, this is just informational. This one goes from facilities on to the county board.
There is the ability at any time to engage for renegotiation if a particularly compelling issue comes up that either party feels is appropriate to bring up and maybe reconsider.
Thank you.
Supervisor Quinn?
So what I understand all that to mean is that there is not, with regard to the situation I described, where the county decides that it wants to use the property, has an opportunity to use the property for something else, and maybe move the fairgrounds and even move the racetrack. We would not be able to do that unilaterally. We would have to negotiate that with.
Potentially, I mean, if you were, to be honest, if you were, as a practical matter, if you were gonna move the fairgrounds to another location and it included a racetrack that was going to be a potentially, of use to the racing association, I don't think you'd have an impasse on any contractual issues here. I think everybody would be in agreement to redo it, but otherwise, it seems to be limited to selling the property and not just repurposing it. So if, for example, it were to be used as for, I don't know, at the risk of bringing up another issue, if it was going to be used as a campground solely instead of a fairground, and we didn't want to, it's not going to allow for unilateral termination. It would require participation by both parties.
Supervisor Steen?
And just a comment, there's a possible to have a contract like school superintendents have 3-year contracts where you negotiate and it rolls over, so it only go, you understand what I'm saying? You know, they have a 3-year contract, but then
Yes.
you negotiate and it rolls on, but you don't have to renegotiate it.
Again, that would be an appropriate motion to bring forward to the board.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I am not in disagreement with anybody. I'm just any changes are gonna have to happen at the full board. But yes, everybody needs to be informed for what changes they might want to talk about. If any of you have very specific thoughts on that, I would suggest that you have a sit-down conversation with Dan. And
Because I would also point out that there is in general agreement with the racing associations
Yeah.
at that time. So if you change this, then we
Yeah. then it'll
essentially have to get
the-
back into negotiation, so.
Yeah, as a practical matter, you're not going to be able to change the contract on the board floor.
Yeah.
What
no.
what you're going to do is either postpone the action, and allow staff to take suggestions and ideas that have come up back to the bargaining table with the racing association and redo the contract.
Okay. So those of you who have intense feelings about this should probably have a sit down with Dan and think. Again, all right. Administration resolution adopting pay grid and other pay related items. You are all pretty familiar with that stuff at this point. Does anyone have any specific questions? All right. Administration resolution adopting the 2025 health benefit premiums, same thing. All right. You have a,
Is it an increase this year? What percentage or what dollar amount? 8%?
so the question was, is there an increase?
There is, and I heard, I overheard conversation prior to the meeting, in which Supervisor Morehouse was asking if there was additional information about that. I would offer that Jenna is here and can run through that if there's interest.
My concern, and I don't know that I have enough knowledge or am prepared to deal with it, but that we offer our wonderful staff a 2% pay increase, and then we increase their health benefit premiums by another addition, by 3%. It just was a concern.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you. And in a conversation yesterday, perhaps, the question was brought up exactly as she said, and as far as the feelings or the way some employees took it. So I'd kind of like to extend this meeting a little bit and ask Jenna to come up and talk about the different options they have and so forth.
Absolutely. It's important. It's all good. Anyone have some more questions about the racing lease while we're waiting? We're about to renegotiate that one too. That's like a few months out. Actually, I do have one contract question. I know with the hockey lease, if we don't negotiate a new deal, it automatically forwards for a ridiculous amount of time. Do we have a similar clause with the racing, or if we don't,
No, the hockey one is
as a uniquely,
a uniquely long life. Thank you for that. I should have been prepared.
okay, folks.
Okay, so I do have in front of you, this is actually the presentation that was presented to the Committee on Administration in the month of October. No, September. What month is it? What year is it? In September, so a few weeks ago. And I'll kind of skip through the wage thing because I don't think that there are many questions on that. So I'll skip through those slides and jump to health insurance. And I believe that the main questions are centered around premium adjustments, right? Okay. So just to kind of recap on the current plan options that we offer to employees, we have option 1, which is a $2,500 single deductible, a $5,000 family deductible. And then we have option 2, which are higher deductibles at $3,500 for an individual, $7,000 for a family. For 2025, we have been working with our consultants, and they do all, I call it fancy math, to take a look at our claims performance in the current year and project into 2025 to determine a number that they would expect us to spend in 2025, right? So this is all projections, similar to the budgeting process, can't be certain. But with all of that fancy math and with where we're trending currently, so far this year, they are expecting our total spend for health costs to be around 7.8 million for 2025. Now, compared to our estimate for what we were expected to spend in 2024, that is an increase of about $1.2 million. So that includes both an anticipated 12% increase to our stop loss premiums, as well as our current claims performance, which is trending high. So what they do is they give us that total exposure number, and then they provide recommendations for how we should go about funding the plan to be able to pay for those anticipated expenses. And so what that meant, and I'll kind of break it down by each plan option. On the single plan option 1, that increased by $14.42 per month overall. This isn't just for employees. This is the overall monthly spend between employees and employer. And then overall increase on the family plan option 1 of $41.56 per month. On option 2, an increase of $26.42 per month, and then an increase of $72.62 per month on the family plan for option 2. With the gap in the budget that we were working through, and with this updated information from our consultants in the second week of September, so we were tasked with, okay, how do we do this? And with a lot of discussion with Beata and Chris and Dan, we had arrived at looking at making changes to our allocations. So what this proposal entails is a increase to the employees from 8% on a single plan of the total contribution to 9%, which equates to about $11.11 per month for an increase on a single plan option 1. Plan option 2, or plan option 1 family plan, that is the plan that is seeing the highest swing in premium contribution by the employee. And that is because we have made an adjustment to the employee contribution to increase by 2%. So that is currently, this year, the employee pays 6% of the overall monthly premium. We're proposing that they would increase that to 8%. And then with the overall cost, ultimately the employee would spend $56 more per month. Plan option 2, we didn't make any changes to the allocations because this is the plan that employees would be taking on more of a risk. So with taking on more risk, that they pay a lower monthly premium. And so a single plan is only seeing $1.31 increase, and the family plan is seeing an increase of $2.91.
Could you, yeah, there's the slide.
Yep.
Is the most common used one, option 1, the family?
Yes, so I can explain the thinking behind adjusting that allocation is, of course, you can imagine that the family plan with the $5,000 deductible is the highest utilizer in incurring the costs to the self-funded plan. But then also with our cost containment strategies and our incentive programs in place, we really wanted to be able to highlight the opportunities for employees in switching from the first plan option to the second. And with that change, they would save about $100 per month in a premium. And with education, which we've been working on for a few years, but we would continue educating on the benefits of having a health savings account and being able to pull that. If, let's say, right now it's about $170 that they're paying per month on the family plan. If they jump to this family plan, that would be, let's say, about $100 that they could put into an HSA account and keep more of their own money, right? And so throughout the year that would build, they would be able to have the opportunity to earn up to $1,500 from the county to contribute to their HSA. And then we also still have an incentive program that they can earn through, it's called our care navigation. So if they have planned procedures, they can call a number and they help them shop for the best value provider for that. And we incentivize employees to do that. For example, a hip replacement. If they go through the extra hoops, to be fair, to call and evaluate the best value provider, that could save the plan about, honestly, $50,000 potentially, and we would pay the member a $3,000 incentive. So with the ability to offset the premium costs and put savings into the HSA, to earn the $1,500 savings to from the employer to their HSA, and with the incentive program, we feel that allows a lot of opportunity to offset those higher cost deductibles that we're seeing. And we did just have open enrollment meetings the last few weeks, and we tried to explain that, but we are circling back here next week to kind of help revisit that thought and encourage folks to consider making that change. Because I would love to see more money staying in their own bank accounts as well. But if you have, I think the question was, where's the biggest increase? It's here on this family $5,000 deductible plan. But it wasn't a simple answer to say that they're all increasing by 3% or 5%. So you might not have been expecting this rant, but I had to be clear about how this came about. Does that help?
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize that as a rant. I would characterize that as a highly informative lecture.
Sure.
Supervisor Steen.
Yes, Jen, if we left the county's contribution the same, how much money is that? And if you don't have the figure tonight, which you probably don't, can you get that? In other words, leave the employer contribution the same as it is this year.
Oh, okay. You mean the
The
percentage?
The percentage.
The percentage. Let's see.
And
Dan's normally got his calculator ready to do this for me. What is 94% of 26, this number right here? That would be the county contribution if we left it at 94%.
Yeah.
Someone help me out.
Someone smarter than me.
I would try to do it, but then I'd lose my slide and we'd have to wait another 10 minutes. So about 2,583, that would be this number here. That's what the county would pay per month. That would be about $120 increase on the county contribution per employee per month.
And I'm looking at the total amount of money.
Mm-hmm. I can get you that number.
Yep.
It might take me a few minutes.
Oh, that's
So,
all right. That's
yep.
fine. Yep. That's-
Yep. That, if and we did start there, to be honest. And it increased, I would expect about 180,000 overall on the PEP sheet, on the personnel costs roll up.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so considering all of those factors, and with our strategy and encouraging folks to open a health savings account, save their own money, certainly there are families and individuals that need the health insurance and are needing the health care. The goal would be for the folks that don't doctor a lot and that are able to make informed decisions about selecting providers, for our spend to start to trend down, and then for us to be able to improve the plan for those folks that do usually hit their deductible every year.
Supervisor Steen.
Yeah, just one last comment. It's actually what it is cost shifting,
Mm-hmm.
not saving any money. Thank you.
Supervisor Headland.
And at that meeting, we visited all these things, and that exact question that Diane brought up came up immediately. Are we going to, is my paycheck going to be any bigger, even with the raise?
Oh, yeah.
Especially if I, chose that expensive plan. And that certainly was a concern. There's another factor in this, and the other factor is that we are experiencing an extremely large increase in drug costs. Prescription drug cost expense coming out of the medical plans. And so at first it looked like, I suggested that looks like we were going to have maybe a little surplus at the end. And that maybe the last paycheck of the year, we wouldn't have to even take out a premium. But then when all the numbers got put together, where did that shoot me down? But at the same time, the committee thought that was a good idea. So if things were to flip flop, and instead of a 1.2 million increase, we had a $350,000 decrease or something like that, we could in fact decide to do something like that, where we would then reduce, say, the premiums in the month of December, or skip a premium deduct or something like that. You know, trying to give it back if we have something to give back. That was our strategy. Again, like I said, you said, you know, if it was an idea, it might not have been the best.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you. Now, everyone, no matter which plan they take, is eligible for a health savings account. Is that correct?
Yes, both of our plan, or all of our plan options are HSA eligible.
And does the county contribute to the HSA for all of the plans?
Employees on the health plan are eligible to receive an HSA contribution from the county as long as they follow through on some of our wellness provisions that aren't as invasive as you might hear at other employers, but it's called our employee self-care plan. So really we're incentivizing them to take care of themselves.
And how much is that?
On a family plan, they can earn up to $1,500 in the year. I'd be happy
Well,
to.
it's
write on the flip
$1,500 if it's $1,500 for a single parent with kiddos
Mhm.
or for a couple. So it's not up to, they get $1,500.
Well-
It's $750 for a single.
Mhm. Right, if it's
If you're a couple.
if they don't, the employee, let's say their spouse doesn't want to do the wellness plan, which I'm sure it happens. The employee themselves can then just earn $750. And I know it's kind of hard
I mean,
to.
I would also say, I mean, I think there's also sort of a danger in saying this, but we really are trying to incentivize being a wise consumer of healthcare. It helps the employee and it helps the employer. You know, helps our plan and it helps the employee. So, as Jenna indicated, you know, so not every family that is involved in taking the $5,000 deductible plan is able to switch because they might be a heavy utilizer of care. But if you are taking that plan and you're able to, you know, make some choices about your health care, you are automatically saving $120 a month in premium. You can put that directly in your HSA. And nothing about your paycheck is gonna change. You know, it just flip-flops where the money goes from the plan to your HSA. And as Jenna says, then you become the determiner of how you decide that you want to spend that money.
Mhm.
And so our goal is we're trying to, in a sense, incentivize or encourage people to utilize our care navigation, reform medicine. We still know that we have a fair number of people. We had great reception to our use of reform. But we know that we still have a whole bunch of people who go to Mayo and have their lab work done, and they can have it done for free at reform. We know that they are going to urgent care because they have strep throat, and they can go to reform and be seen within 24 hours. And that can be the $10 fee for them. So we're trying to, I think we've tried to work on the education piece. We're also trying to make it a tiny bit painful for those who have choices to maybe consider being a wiser consumer of healthcare.
Can you go back to this slide where the projection of our maximum liability? And I guess that's the example of a simple preventative visit at a non-reform medicine provider, which is zero cost to the employee to go get have a preventative appointment. And then if they get blood taken, which is not considered preventative, they're going to get a bill for that blood work of maybe let's just say $200. Then they'll have to pay a portion of they'll have to pay that because that's part of their deductible. The plan, on the other hand, is taking that preventative visit. There's a cost for it. It goes to the plan and it fills up that number right there. As people do that over and over again, it makes that number bigger. And that's what leads to increased premiums, that number going up. If that same employee were to go to reform medicine, that number does not change. So that simple choice of getting a preventative visit with one doctor versus another can lead to increasing premiums. So that when we talk about really educating or having them be a smart consumer, there are ways that they can save themselves that premium increase next year by making this choice now. And it's not just them, it's the premium increase for them and everybody else that is on that plan.
Stated a different way from so if I have an ear infection and I choose to go to a medical provider in the community, and I have not used $1 of healthcare services this year, it's going to hit my deductible. I'm going to pay out of pocket probably close to $200 at least for the office visit and whatever tests that they run and the medications. So upwards of $300, $400, or $500 wouldn't be unusual. I could go to Reform for $10. They'd run all the lab work. They'd give me a prescription. I'd go to, and that, so none of that, because I haven't met my deductible, none of that hits the plan, but it hits my pocketbook. But we still know that there aren't people we know that there are people that don't necessarily understand that. And that's what we're continually trying to educate people about, is how to be a wise consumer, because it's not just about making the plan healthier or better. It's about how I spend my own personal money, and I don't have to spend it at a local healthcare provider for a simple medical need.
I think the other thing to consider too with if I may, sorry. With the anticipated 2025 costs is the anticipated healthcare inflation rate in Wisconsin is between 10 and 12% as well. And we did go 2 years with no premium increase, and we improved the plan designs without increasing premiums. So that we were doing really well, kind of defying the odds. It's also kind of an unwritten rule in the insurance world that every 5 years you have a bad year. And I do think that we are seeing that this year. There's no perfect science to that, of course, but as she said, I think it's typical for employees to just look at premiums and deductibles, but and it's understandable because this is all new and this is all really complicated, and it's really a shame that we have to do things that are so complicated in order to try and make it all work as far as controlling the spend. But there's more to our plan than just the premiums and the deductibles, with our HSA incentives and our care navigation incentives and reform medicine. It's huge. And so we just really want to be able to encourage folks to take that seriously and get the most out of those benefits.
Thank you, Jenna. Does that cover everybody's questions?
Thank you, Jenna.
Okay, excellent work. Now run for the hills. free. G, Planning Resources and Development Committee Ordinance Rezone, General Agriculture to R1. Donald Lentz, everybody has seen these. Does anyone want more details? All right, that brings us to the end of review of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board. Item 10, reports from standing committees. Oh, let's start on this end. John, are you? Supervisor Calabrese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Judiciary and Law Committee met here on September 30th, and the bulk of the agenda was reports from the departments, and learned some interesting things that I wanted to share. Emergency management detailed how there's been some, they share their services with, or they cover services for Buffalo and Chippewa County when those counties have, when their systems go down for whatever reason. And it's happened a few times recently, so Melissa wanted to put it in her report, and she detailed how difficult that is when they're covering Buffalo County emergency calls and people are referencing points and roads and places that they're not familiar with. So I found that to be interesting. And they also did an active shooter simulation practice a few weeks back, which revealed some really important findings that they had, which the main one was that there's been a recently new radio system implemented throughout the emergency services, the Menominee Police, the Dunn County Sheriff, and the ambulances and emergency management. And apparently these radio systems have a ton of frequencies and then several different banks that hold these frequencies, bank 1, bank 2. And they realized through the simulation that they weren't using the same backup frequency. And so it caused a lot of, or too long of a delay for that sort of situation. So really glad that they did the simulation because now they're all on the same frequency.
You want to find out?
Yes. And the medical examiners talked about the higher numbers of unclaimed bodies and that they are able to intern them at Potter's Field in Dunn County. And she mentioned that the Dunn County Historical Society has some funds available for a monument to go up that will have folks' names on it and date of birth and date of death. And the sheriff's office had a budget adjustment to have new locks on all the, or a new system that controls the locks on all the jail cell doors because the one that they have is not compatible with the computer that they're using. It's sort of outdated. So they had to get a budget adjustment so they can use the doors. And the next meeting is here on October 28th.
Thank you, Supervisor Calabrese. Supervisor Steen, you wanted to add something from utilities tax?
Yeah, I just want to give you a quick update on the Wisconsin Counties Utility Tax Association Board of Directors. We met Friday, October 1st in Madison. Interesting meeting, and I'll just read some of the highlights, I guess, or whatever. The revised estimate utility aid payments for 2024, the amount will be paid in full the third Monday in November. 55% of Wisconsin counties received UA increases in this biennium, which is good. The legislative agenda for the WCUTA is, the big thing coming is energy storage. And prior to us having a solar farm, it really didn't mean much to our county, but I sent all the members of the executive board a copy of what I received, and it also lists what the counties received in aid and what townships and villages received. So you should have got it today. So I think it's interesting. And our number one lobbying point is going to be getting energy storage under the aid cap, so counties can get reimbursed for that, or townships can get reimbursed for that. It's going to be a big item. Also coming is liquid natural gas is another thing that's coming on, and not just storing electricity, but storing energy of all kinds. So it's kind of a breaking situation, and it's good to be ahead of it rather than behind it. So appreciate you for sending me, and I'll try to be more, or I'll give you as much information as I have about it. So thank you.
Supervisor Bauer.
Thank you. The Community Resources and Tourism meeting, we met here on September 17th. Kristen Bruder gave her report, that she let us know that Melissa Burt, her associate, had gave her resignation, so she is moving to Extensive Natural Resources, so up in Hayward, somewhere up that way, I guess. So she also gave us an update on livestock educator position. Margaret Murphy provided an update on programming and outreach research. He answered a lot of questions from the committee. Chief Information Officer, Assistant County Manager Dan gave some updates on the new Director of Economic Developments in Greater Dunn County. And we also okayed a couple of legislative agendas, that which you probably read them on the paper here. And as far as the broadband, I might as well get that one right away. The areas have not been sent out yet, so there's no information until after November. I think they'll get out for the areas to be quoted on, so. That about takes care of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health and Human Services Board last met on September 26th. I had invited Steve McCarthy, who is the Executive Director of the newly merged United Way. It's called the St. Croix and Red Cedar Valley United Way. So it involves the St. Croix and the former Dunn County's United Way. I had asked him to give us a presentation on ALICE. I don't know how familiar any of you are with ALICE. It's an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed Persons. These are working people who cannot make ends meet. And just, I've got a bunch of data here, but we've been going long. So 37% of Dunn County are ALICE. They're either below the federal poverty line or are ALICE constrained. Yeah, and it ranges from 16% in the township of Red Cedar to, are you ready for this? 68% in Ridgeland. The city of Menominee is 51%, although I'm pretty sure that's mediated by the size of the student population. Anyway, at some point this would be, when we're not doing budget or this would be a great set of data for the county board, the whole county board, to consider, because it has lots of implications on us moving forward. So we had our usual great reports, and I just want to, and everybody's in the black, which is awesome. I just wanted to say a couple of things that the Great Rivers Consortium had just been through, that's our economic support, had been through a management review and got rave reviews. And if you bear with me for 1 second, I also, we talked about the fact that the health department had just received its level 3 public health department certification. And this is a letter from Paula Tran, who is the state health officer, addressed to me. And I promise you I won't read the whole thing. The Department of Health Services congratulates the Dunn County Health Department for demonstrating the infrastructure and program capacity to be certified as a level 3 health department. I want to acknowledge the work of the Dunn County Health Department staff. Katie Gallagher, health officer, did an excellent job of providing quality evidence of meeting statutes and rules. I am acutely aware of the stress of operating a health department and that the demands on public health directors and professionals have increased exponentially during the state and global pandemic. I applaud the dedicated efforts of KT and the Dunn County Health Department staff to keep your jurisdiction safe and healthy. So our health and human services staff and our public health staff are duly rewarded for their hard work. We reviewed the vouchers and approved a budget amendment, which we've already looked at today. And our next meeting is the 24th of October.
Thank you, Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PR&D has met twice since our last meeting. We received our usual excellent department reports, and just to remind you, the divisions that the committee oversees are the Register of Deeds, Planning and Zoning, Land and Water Conservation, and Survey. We had a report that the contracts have been signed with Regional Planning to provide technical assistance on development of the comprehensive plan over the next year. We had 2 public hearings. One was the lien rezone that we talked about earlier. The other was to possibly consider the rezone of the solid waste lots that the site that the county owns in preparation for its potential sale. And of course, the discussion there is what zone, what area, what category should be rezoned into. And the options are probably light industrial or general commercial. What we decided to do was to just take no action, since the town board referred the matter to the town of Menominee Planning Commission, and they will not meet until next month, I think. So we'll take it up after they make a recommendation to us. We reviewed a cooperative agreement with Beaver Creek Reserve and with Dunn County and 5 other neighboring counties to do an invasive species program and to coordinate the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network. We approved several variances to basically use existing access easements that do not meet county width standards. And that's about it. We meet again. Well, we'll see. I don't think we're going to meet next week, actually.
Oh.
Breaking news. You have the morning off.
Thank you, Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Kinnear.
Okay, thank you. This is for the neighbors of Dunn County. We have not met since the last meeting. And we don't know when we're going to meet again. We're trying to set that up. There's been a little bit of ERP meetings has gotten in the way, so we're setting it up. In between, I assume that everything has been going real good from what I've talked to. And a little bit of COVID causes some problems, and they had a successful survey. I call them inspections, but they're called surveys. So they did a really good job with that. And like I said, we should be meeting here in the next week or 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Prochnow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Highway met this morning. Our shop is busy with general maintenance, and then we're fabricating 2 of the plow trucks this year that we bought like 2 years ago. The other 2 trucks have arrived over at the dealer. They'll be sent down to Universal to get fabricated, but they won't get to us until probably May. So that's why we fabricated to ourselves. As far as road projects, obviously County Road B is coming along. Should be completed by November 1st. They're just doing some little bit pieces in there and stuff like that. So, County Road Z project completed. That was that 3-year project that we did a third each year. That one's all completed now. County Road Double V project is almost completed. I think they're doing shouldering actually today and stuff. So, new Colfax salt shed has been put in. Staff updates, our assistant highway commissioner took a different position, so we're trying to fill that one now. Got several good candidates, so we should fill that hopefully by the end of the month or so. Otherwise, basically working on maintenance. We did a lot of overlays. Just trying to wrap everything up before the end of the year. That's my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Prochnow. Supervisor Headland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee on Administration met here in this room September 26th at 3 p.m. Part of a lot of what we did was the approval of the grid pay increases, along with, of course, a long, hard look at, where we were going with those healthcare costs and benefits and so on. And like I said, to me, it looked a whole lot better at first. And then when Jen updated the numbers, it didn't look so good. I did kind of my own guesstimation, for the meeting and thought, gee whiz, you know. I was gonna be a hero, Jeff. Come on. Anyway, the other thing we heard, from the clerk was that, some safety, measures that they were, implementing and educating on the upcoming election. I guess unfortunately or fortunately, I guess glad we were on top of it. Unfortunately, we have to consider it. And I guess along with that, we approved paying vouchers. And I guess again made that note that unfortunately we anticipating a 1.2 million increase from one year to the next in claims. Hopefully that won't take place because that just means that there's people out there getting sick or injured or their children are or something. So I guess better news means also better numbers. So hoping for that. Our next meeting will be held October 24th here in this room at 3:00. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Headland. All right, our next meeting will be November 6th, which is a week ahead because the board meeting is a week and a day ahead. So November 6th, November 12th. Remember those, they'll be important. And that's all I've got. We are adjourned.